Welcome to the Donna Sebo Show Special Editions. This program is dedicated to featuring authors and experts from around the world who will share their knowledge and insight with you. The viewing and listening audience, literacy and education are the keys to freedom, and diversity enables one to live in a world with broader perspectives. This is Donna Sebo, and I will be your host for the next hour. Welcome to Special Editions. I'm Donna Sebo, and I am delighted that today we are going to be talking about a subject matter that I think many of you might be interested in, and that is going to be the subject matter of super aging. Now, I had the privilege of becoming acquainted with four gentlemen who are directly involved in that senior environment, but one of them is a little bit younger, but they're all dedicated to making sure that you as an individual and collectively can take a whole different view on what you think about aging, what it means, and, well, depending on what age bracket you're in, you may be surprised at some of the things we are going to be discussing. Dick Cravett and Larry Wolf are the authors of the program, of the book, Super Aging, and we're going to be finding out more from them. And then also we have Dr. Will, who is very much involved with the physical wellness aspect of aging. And then we have Brent Green, and he's going to be talking about the marketing for the boomers and those that are going to be following. So no matter what your age is, I think you're going to find this subject matter a fascinating one, and it sure has made a difference for a lot of us that are in our mature years. Gentlemen, I want to welcome you to the show.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you for
having
inviting us, Donna.
You know what?
Thank you so much.
I really think that this kind of a subject matter is so important. And Dick and Larry, I had the privilege of talking with you not too all that long ago. And when I had the opportunity to have you on the show, I thought this is really going to be amazing. And because of you, we've become acquainted with a couple of other people that you actually mention in your book, Super Aging. Dick, how did you become acquainted with Larry? And Larry, you may want to address it, but how did the two of you get together to put together this wonderful publication called Super Aging?
Let me start that off. And by the way, I'd love to be Dick Cavett, but it's actually David Cravett. Honest mistake. So it's David, not Dick, but that's okay. That's a mistake I wish that I could market, actually. So Larry and I go back more than 50 years. He was my first ever boss in advertising. He had an ad agency in Toronto, and I'll let him tell you a little bit more about that. And I was a junior copywriter and I was with him for several years. And for the entire rest of my career, which was in advertising, we stayed in touch, and I never learned as much for the rest of my career than I did from him. So we have kept in touch. And as I started to get interested in aging, this is my third book on the aging, the reinvention of aging, and so on. Larry and I got talking, and we said, here's a chance to maybe come at this in a little bit different way. And Larry, you could maybe even pick up, from that.
Great. David had written a couple of terrific expository books, The New Old Age and Age for Aging, where he really explained what's going on very, very well. So what occurred to me is there may be an opportunity to positively brand aging, to create a positive vision of aging, and under that brand concept, to give people the resources they need to live longer, and more critically, not only live longer, but have a very, very fulfilling life as they age. So we essentially got together and interviewed a lot of people and created essentially a how to do it book on super aging, how to get older without getting old.
And Larry, do you mind if I ask you what your age is? Because you're still very, very active.
No, I am indeed. I've turned 80. Donna, I'm 85 now, would you believe?
Congratulations.
Well, thank you.
That's wonderful. It's really an inspiration, actually, to talk with all of you because we have developed a whole different attitude about aging. And I think that that is especially significant. Dick, when you and Larry were working on this book together, there had to have been really some very significant observations that you yourself have made with people as they're getting older. What is the biggest and most significant thing that you have noticed with people that are in their 60s, their 70s, their 80s? What is it that you've noticed that significantly has changed, especially in the last 10 years?
Well, the biggest change has been the expectation of lifespan, and because longevity is real. The first book I did 18 years ago was about how baby boomers were not acting old. But that was true no matter how long they were living. But now you take the classical view of aging, you're 65 years old, you've got 10 years to go, 12 years to go, and that's it. So there's not enough time to do anything except, God willing, age free from pain. But now the big change, and it's a huge change, and it drives everything else, is that a 65-year-old today can aspire to 20 years, 30 years. The fastest growing age group is centenarians. So if you say to yourself, I'm at the traditional age of retirement, but now I got 25 or 30 years to go, what am I going to do with that time? And that opens up all kinds of possibilities, which crosses over into super aging, because now you've got to look at, yes, you have to look at health and diet and nutrition and the classical keep alive things, get older thing. But you also have to look at the without getting old component, which is maybe I'm going to keep working. Maybe I'm not going to retire at all. Maybe I'm going to have a whole new plan for a complete change in direction. Maybe I'm going to try to accomplish things. So that's been the big change. People are realizing that they've got a lot more time available, and they're actually trying to figure out what to do with those bonus years.
Brent, I want to ask you about something that most people really don't give much attention to in today's world, and that is the marketing aspect to reaching the boomers, if you will, or those that are going to be, well, let's say within 10, 15, 20 years, they're going to be almost 100 years old. And there are going to be those people that say, give me a break. It's more important to focus on the younger individuals rather than the older. And this is something that's been going on for a long time. Now, you're not of that mindset. What changed your mind about marketing and trying to reach the older and more mature audience?
Well, that pretty much ended for me when I stopped being 49. The classic, and David and Larry will know that. Dave and Larry will know that the demo when we were in the peak of our advertising careers was 18 to 49, and suddenly the boomers started moving beyond that into the 50s, 60s, and now 70s. And it is the largest market in terms of economic power, having about 70% of all assets in the US as an example, and they are continuing to spend money in all categories. Some grow more than others. They're not rushing to buy more furniture, but they're spending a lot of money on luxury travel. They're not rushing to see how much more McDonald's they can eat, but they're going to the finer restaurants and having organic food. So the tastes are changing, but they are dominant in so many of the categories that are responsible for, the success of our economy. And they like being recognized, but they don't want to be pandered to. They want realistic images of the lifestyle that they both have, as well as the lifestyle that they aspire to. And so that is what's changing. instead of having help, I can't get up, you're seeing more advertising with Mick Jagger and Bruce Springsteen, for example. So it's a dominant market. It has a significant share of the economic value being spent both in the US and in Canada. And that's going to continue at least for the next 20 or 30 years.
Well, that brings me to a very significant point, because nutrition and wellness is extremely important. And Dr. Will, you're younger than the rest of these gentlemen, but you have to share how you got involved with nutrition and how it was that you decided after your exploration as a young person, how you really wanted to be able to make a difference. What is it that made you decide? What is it that made you decide, Dr. Will, that you really wanted to make a difference in working with people? And health was significant, but not just health, some other aspects as well.
Well, thank you for having me. I think that for me, having the opportunity to be of assistance for seniors was really something that came second nature based on my geography. I was born and raised in South Florida, and actually the first job that I had was a supermarket, which was around the corner from one of the largest senior living centers in the country. It's called Century Village. And from working at that cash register and soaking in the lessons from my elders coming in and helping me, guide me on my way through medicine, because at the time I knew I wanted to get into physical therapy. Having that opportunity to engage and learn from the wisdom that so many people who came before me had to offer has just really been instrumental in helping me develop. And it only feels right to support people as a healer, especially witnessing the way that living in a strategic manner has provided the boomer generation the opportunity to spend those financial resources on their health and well-being in a time where so much is spent on sick care. It's nice to be here with these gentlemen and work on this project that's going to be such a powerful resource to help countless individuals.
I agree, and I think that working from a point of wellness and really making sure that we understand that there's multiple things that can be done. It's not just with nutrition, but it is also with our mental attitude and our preoccupation about what we're going to focus on, what is going to be, I'll call it like a passion, something we can get engaged with that enables us to see that we have value as seniors. It's not something where it's oriented towards a thinking environment that limits us. In fact, in many ways, seniors have an advantage over younger people because they've got years of experience and there's things that they can do and they can think about. And you look at technology. Look at how technology has made such a difference for all of us, and it's going to continue to advance. And I had someone present some stats to me just recently that more seniors were tech savvy than young people, and I thought, wow, that's quite a statement. You wouldn't expect that. You expect the young ones to be able to do the wheelies with all of the latest technology, but that's not necessarily the case. So it's good that we're able to talk about the fact that unlike our ancestors who were sitting in rocking chairs on front porches, depending on where you were in the country, and they just basically sat and died. I remember a relative of mine saying that their dad reached his 70s, and they said, you know what, I went in, he's watching television, and I'm looking at that, and he said, what are you doing, Dad? And Dad says, I'm just waiting until I die. He was sitting and watching movies, and there was nothing else for him to feel like he could participate in. And that wasn't that long ago. And when we look at what's happening today, I think it's exciting. I really
But
think it's
it ties
exciting.
in with what, if I may, with what Brent was saying, because what you have to look at, Donna, is not just what is the age, but who's doing the aging. So each generation is actually aging a little bit differently. So the baby boomers, which are still the largest group, let's say of 65 plus, they're not going, I'm a boomer, we're not going to age the way our parents did. And you mentioned technology. Now, the baby boomers, when we were younger, we were consuming all the tech we could get our hands on, whatever was hot, whatever was new, all through our lives, we wanted it. So now we suddenly hit our 60s, our 70s. Why are we going to become our grandparents? Why aren't we going to continue to pursue all the technology we can get? We as a generation grew up with technology as part of our whole life. So obviously we're going to continue that. Now that looks novel. It looks new and different because previous generations didn't have that. But when Will's generation turns 60, is Will suddenly going to become a senior citizen of 1958? No. His generation is going to age even more tech than we are. So we're just starting this trend. You're quite right in mentioning it, Donna, as a dramatic trend, but I think it's because of who is doing the aging that makes it so interesting.
And Brent, I wanted to come to you because here we're talking about marketing with you especially. That is your specialty. So when you're out and about and you're talking to businesses and you're saying, don't forget that you have a market here that is relatively untouched in the bigger picture, what is it that you want to emphasize to them relative to their products, to their environments? Do you find that they're open, many of the industries that are around, are they open to being able to service with their product or whatever it is that they're offering the more mature generation?
When I started on this journey advocating for marketing to baby boomers, that was around 2000, 2001. It was an uphill battle to get big companies to think in terms of marketing to the baby boomers because everything switched. The millennials are coming. The millennials are coming. This is where our opportunity is. And in some company situations, the millennials and the older Generation X were starting to take over. So there was kind of a emphasis on youth in that setting, but it was inconsistent with reality. And that reality is that, as David was saying, the boomers are aging in their own way, and that is not necessarily to deny aging, but to enhance and augment the experience of their life trajectory. So I emphasize a lot of things in my presentations, such as kind of the universal goal to self-actualize, to be able to create your life in a creative way and balance work, fun, relationships, and everything else. So anyway, we talk about that. We also talk about the experience of the company. Every product, every service is an experience. And to emphasize the experiential aspects is very important for marketers to consider. I'll let David pick it up from there.
Yeah, I think that, but it goes back to how we want to see ourselves. And you said it, we don't want to see ourselves as old and helpless and what I call the there, dear syndrome. But I don't think the market even recognizes how much capability there is in the older generation, because that capability, I think people, and this is something you may want to explore, but people in the generation are not recognizing it themselves. I think super aging is relatively, wait a minute, I got all this time, wait a minute, I can do all these things, I have this potential, I don't need to decline and fade away and kind of I don't need to be the guy that you mentioned, Donna, sitting in front of the TV doing nothing. Wait a minute, that's just opening my eyes to a whole new way of thinking about things. And that's what we need to get to. And that's what our book is about, to try to, promote that this possibility exists for everyone.
Dr. Will.
And I do think, social media technology, the world the boomer grew up in and the world we're in currently is so radically changing. People are living longer. There's many more advanced resources to maintain a healthy lifestyle, to live really well. There's accessibility to so much that's new and exciting. Really, the boomers both have a different attitude, and that's sort of reinforced and generated by the fact, I think, that they're in a very different world today. Although default aging still is the the predominant ethos, really the predominant perceptual set of society. So super aging is coming, it's growing dramatically, but our world is still dominated by the concept of default aging, unfortunately.
Well, I know that that's changing, and we're having a voice in helping that change. Dr. Will, I wanted to ask you a couple of questions, because one of the biggest factors is to stay well. Now, we obviously want to take care of ourselves when we're younger, and we want to be sure that we are doing the best we can with exercise, etc. I wanted to ask you a question, and that is, you have an African-American background, and one of the biggest things that's being brought forward, especially since COVID, is the difference in, let's say, the response of African-Americans to certain types of nutritional situations. And then you have the Asians that have a particular body chemistry, and then you have the Caucasians. You have composites, if you will. When you're dealing with different individuals with your background, you've got such an extensive background of experience as well as education. When you're looking at and working with people that are in their senior years and they are on a lot of medications and maybe they don't want to be on those medications, how are you able to work with them?
I think it can be a complex situation, of course, because there are so many factors to include into the consideration of helping someone get to the point where they can safely get themselves off of medication. But I think it's important to work along with different areas of the person's healthcare team. As a physical therapist, I would certainly want to be in communication with a person's primary care physician, their cardiologist, their endocrinologist, whoever it might be, their neurologist, to help put the pieces together to making the transition to a healthier way of life. I do believe that it's important to recognize that making that kind of change takes a lot of time, and it's something that it's more important to work on integrating the healthy lifestyle factors that are going to help a person's body adapt and change in a way that promotes longevity. In the book, there's a lot of good mentioning of a group of people in these areas called blue zones, and it also talks about the way that the DNA is more affected by the environment, and the things we're subjected to play such a more prevalent role. You know, when it comes to people's backgrounds, I think the biggest factor is that we tend to eat more the way our families eat and the way our parents eat, and we tend to have these same habits. And it's more about learning to replace habits that don't support a healthy lifestyle and utilizing the right things to help you get to your goals. And I think this book is a step-by-step basis to help individuals accomplish that.
Dick, you had mentioned, you and Larry both put together 7 steps in your book, Super Aging. You had put together the information that you wanted people to be aware of. What are those 7 steps that you focused on?
I'll take the first 2, and then Larry, do you want to step in on
Sure,
that?
no, absolutely.
The first 2, the reason I say I'm taking the first 2 is that they're like an umbrella covering everything. And then the second 5 are the individual. So the first one is attitude. Attitude overshadows everything in a way that you have to have a positive attitude. Research shows that people with a positive attitude, older people with a positive attitude, outlive by as much as 30%, depending what study you're looking at, people who have a negative attitude. So you have to believe in the reality of super aging. You just have to say, hey, this is real, this is true, this can happen to me, I can have these extra years. I believe I can have these extra years. I have some things I want to do. I have a purpose. I have a positive attitude. The second A is awareness. And we talk about awareness. It's always been important. And other previous generations, before baby boomers, before the silent, everybody kind of had some information. Usually they got it from their doctor. So it's not like it's brand new. But nowadays, there's a glut of information and it's multiplying quickly. And the number of things you need to keep track of, that's our point, that you need to, we have a 360-degree lens. Yes, it's health. It's in Dr. Wu's area, it's in health and nutrition and fitness. Yes, it's diet, but it's also finance. Where are you gonna get enough money for 30 years? Occupation, what are you going to do? Gosh, I never realized that there's actually coaches I can hire to help me figure out the next 30 years of my life. You mean there's people that are trained to do this for me? Yes, there are. Technology, what do I have to keep up with? What are the new gadgets and gizmos? What about robots? What about AI? What about all the new medical discoveries? You have to keep up with all this. And in the book, we suggest a fairly simple system so you don't get overwhelmed, but you come at it in an organized way. So if you start out with a positive attitude, A, and then you get into the habit of keeping aware of lots of more topics than you ever had to follow in the past, now you're ready for the next 5 steps. And Larry, you can go through those ones.
Great, thanks. Well, following from attitude and awareness is activity. The old saying, use it or lose it, is very, very true. So we talk about, as David mentioned, the critical things, like diet, exercise, which many other books cover very, very well. But beyond that, I think people need to take charge of their own health. They need to manage their own medical issues. They need sort of a life plan. And as important as physical activity is, mental activity is equally critical. There are many things, as we cover in the book, that people can do to maintain their mental acuity, to maintain their memory, to remain the same vibrant, alert people they were when they were younger. From activity follows accomplishment. On the newsfeed in our website, there's a wonderful article about a 100-year-old doctor who's still practicing. And what he advises people, and I quote, "Retirement is the enemy of longevity." So you need to keep working. If it's not continuing your career, if it's not a new career, then it's volunteer work or increasing your education, but you really need to do something and continue to accomplish. And accomplishment really is just a critical key to quality of life. Equally important, attachment. I've been lucky enough to be married to the same wonderful lady for over 55 years. And, family relationships, extending and building in your relationships are very, very critical. Attachment, sense of community, an essential 7A. Autonomy, as David mentioned, so much is happening with technology. And if people can age in place, and as they age, have a user-friendly environment, a home that facilitates their aging no matter what the medical conditions are, that's important. Also, as David mentioned, is financial autonomy. If you're going to live to 100, how do you make sure you have the financial resources to continue living a healthy life? And lastly, and critically, is avoidance. Ageism is a huge, huge issue. I mean, in so many areas, as Brent pointed out, it's a huge issue economically. It's also a huge issue politically, a huge issue socially. It's a medical issue as well. One of the things we talk about is we ask the question, should you fire your doctor? Well, if your doctor sort of has an ageist perception and says, well, this guy's 85, he's not going to live that long anyways, you probably should, because I mean, part of aging well is taking advantages of all the incredible new things that are happening both with medical and with technical research. So those are the critical 7 A's. And I think, Donna, one thing that's important is all these things are synergistic. Everything ties into everything else: attitude, awareness, activity. Each of the 7 A's reinforces the other 7 A's. So critically, they sort of cohere together to become an interactive lifestyle system. Just an aside, I think one of the things that makes Dr. Will such a brilliant, such an incredible physiotherapist is his familiarity with all sorts of alternative health modalities. I first met Dr. Will because we were studying with the same Tai Chi master. And Dr. Will is not only well-versed in Tai Chi, he's well-versed in yoga, Eastern medicine, all the myriad techniques beyond his traditional discipline. And it's this synergism, this tying everything together in a cohesive way, I think, that makes such a big difference in one's life.
Brent, I wanted to talk to you for a minute because it has been known in advertising for many, many years that women have more control over the money I'll say especially in the United States from some of the research that I have received. And do you find that this is an area that really, when it comes to the senior environment, that needs to be focused on and focused on well? I know you've published a book relative to men and marketing to the boomer male generation. What about the ladies?
Well, you know, I definitely know about what you're talking about, Donna. I have colleagues, female colleagues, who've written books on marketing to baby boomer women, and we've shared the stage together. So they will talk about the female cohort, and I'll talk about the male cohort, so that we can kind of get a broad base. But there's no question that the woman baby boomer is a critical factor in taking us forward into a super aging era. They make many of the decisions in terms of what's purchased in the household. They, you know, unlike older generations, are buying everything from luxury vacations to cars. So the female is a very important part of this whole process of the change that's going on. In fact, you can look at postmodern feminism as a factor in the change we have in our conception of aging today, because it is part of this question about autonomy and is also about taking control of a person's life and being able to make decisions and having the money to back up those decisions. And most of the baby boomer women were one of the first members of the past generations that actually entered the workforce en masse and became financially independent. They were not fully dependent on their male counterpart. So to think about marketing to boomers, you really have to think about marketing to baby boomer women. And when you look at the 7 A's of super aging, you need to plug in, how does this impact the women in our lives as much as the men, if not more so, because they will propel the change. They'll do it in so many different ways, from grandparenting to late life decision making, such as joining a community like Del Webb, for example, in Arizona. In the health and wellness area, they're very focused on working with multiple disciplines, working with chiropractors, working with physical therapists, working with all other kinds of people in the medical domain, and being more or less in charge of what they are involved in. So.
Yes, we gals have a tendency to sort of get bossy when it comes to those significant others in our lives. And so often men have not been willing to listen, but that's changed, hasn't it? The men are willing to listen. And Dr. Will, what is your positioning when you find that you have people approach you that want you to assist them in being healthier and really delaying and if not eliminating a prospect of illness, since they're going to have a chance to live to be well over 100. This is happening more and more. I mean, you look at the stats in Japan and different parts of the world, and you look at Okinawa, you look at so many different countries that they're seeing more and more of the older populations, and they're very concerned. They're very concerned because they say it's reached an apex where we have more seniors than we do younger people. So you have people coming to you saying, I want to be better. What's the difference in working with the men and working with the women?
Okay, so I think there are differences. I think the most important in terms of one's physical health has to do with the women's have the tendency to appreciate more cardiovascular types of exercises, and the men like to do more of the weightlifting resistance types of exercises. And I think that both genders can benefit from swapping a little bit more, adding a little more flexibility for the man whose body already has more testosterone, so it's easier to maintain his dense muscle tissue. So he can benefit from a little bit more flexibility and movement and mobility, where the woman's body particularly needs more strengthening to support the bone structure and prevent osteoporosis. So resistive exercise to maintain one's ability to independently function, whether it's lifting the groceries from Costco or picking up a grandchild, or just going on a trip and doing something that's related to outdoor activities and having the strength to support yourself. I think that it's really possible to achieve your goals in terms of longevity, but you got to take a holistic approach, and you have to recognize, I use the car analogy, where a classic car, if you're going to drive it on a regular basis, it's just going to take a little bit more commitment than a newer model car. And as you age, you have to be prepared to commit more of your daily 24 hours to supporting healthy eating, managing your stress more appropriately, moving, and being, nurturing those social connections with family and friends.
The research that has come out relative to the people in Okinawa, that has been something that's been focused on very much so, and everything that you have mentioned is so significant. The social interaction with other people, making sure that you don't isolate yourself, having the commitment to being active and making sure that you do stay and keep yourself in good shape. But one of the things that I noticed about them was the fact that they supported each other. And I think that social interaction is vitally, vitally necessary. And it's something that I've observed with clients that I've interacted with, that when they start to isolate themselves, whether they're male or female, they find that their lives are very empty, even if they might have a job or they're productive in some some other way, if they don't have that one-on-one personal association, it really isolates them in a very specific way. And look at the aspects of depression that are being brought forward because of COVID, and people of ages that you wouldn't think it would have affected them so deeply, but the younger generation doesn't have the resiliency as the older generations have, which I think is great. Super Aging, the publication, has so many different aspects in it, and one of the aspects that we haven't touched on is sexuality. And this is a topic that's so often, and I just have to laugh, there are those, well, let's just say a younger generation, when they look at somebody that's older, they'll go, yeah, right, you're tottering along, and you know, it's okay, there's no big deal, we understand. And they go through all of that. And then to read in your book about two people that got married, and they were over 100 years of age, and you have a wonderful chapter on sexuality. Who was the couple? I mean, that is not something many people expect to see, a couple over 100 years of age. Okay, Dick, you've got to answer that one.
Well, okay, but there was, that story was interesting, but I also, another story that plays maybe into sexuality a bit more was the Rayhan's case that I referred to in the book, where she's in a nursing home with dementia. He's living outside the nursing home. They have grown-up children, of course. They're in their 70s, maybe late 70s. And he comes over, and I guess it's a second marriage for both of them, so she's got some grown-up daughters maybe that don't care for him. But he comes over to the nursing home, and they have a sexual encounter, the two of them. And the children bring a lawsuit for statutory rape because she wasn't capable of an informed decision of consent because of her dementia. And who would have thought that this thing could go to trial at that age? And he gets acquitted. But what's interesting, and I do refer to it in the book, is all of a sudden the whole nursing home industry says, well, wait a minute, we've got to revisit this whole topic. What if they do want to have sex in the home? Is it our business to stop them? What if they're both residents here? What if they're in a semi-private room? What if one of them's in? And then this is exactly to your point, Donna, because the previous regulatory regime, if you will, would have said this can't happen, this doesn't happen. We maybe, our nursing staff, have to discourage this from happening. But now, do they have the right at that age? Do you have the right to stop them? And so what was an unthinkable topic suddenly becomes a very mainstream problem for within the nursing home industry. And that's, I think, a dramatic example of exactly what you're talking about, that these are things that we never had to worry about before. Is it a coincidence the highest rate of STD is baby boomer women? Where'd that come from all of a sudden? So they are out there, you know, still active, still engaged, and that's just another aspect of super aging that why it's such a revolution, because it's the longevity is touching every single aspect of life.
I think you're also addressing something that I thought about. When I read your book, I saw myself in the book. In other words, I saw the values and the decisions that need to be made really reflect my own life, and then inform me of where I'm falling short in my knowledge or my willingness to take action. But going back to sexuality in the nursing home, that same subject has come up with respect to marijuana. With the baby boomers moving into nursing homes and it's still being federally illegal, is it okay or should the nursing home industry, the long-term care industry, allow people to go out and smoke a joint, you know, if they want to? And in places like Colorado, Washington State and so forth, it is legal. So what I'm driving at is that the culture and the sociology of super aging are in place, but they need to be defined. It needs to be explained, and it needs to be a holistic understanding of what it means. And I think this is one thing that the book did for me in reading it, is, as I said, I saw myself in the book, every aspect
wonderful
of
to hear.
it, from do-it-yourself health with Dr. Will to being more effective in terms of making decisions financially. It's all in there. And so it both reflects and incorporates what I think is true, generationally speaking.
Dr. Will, what about the situation discussing sexuality relative to the business you're in, and that's keeping people well? I'm sure the topic comes up every once in a while.
Believe it or not, it doesn't come up as much as you'd think.
Really?
Probably because I think there's still a little taboo about, and that's a cultural thing, because we don't have healthy examples of seniors and sexuality on television and cinema. It's definitely more directed towards that younger audience. But I think in times where I have had discussions regarding sexuality, I think that, it's very much possible, and it should be an important part of one's life. And the better a person takes care of their body physically, whether that's supporting their muscular ability to get into positions, as well as cardiovascular health in terms of men and circulation, and how that affects one's ability to get an erection and like sustain a healthy sexual lifestyle. I think being fit just makes everything better, whether it's the performance or the aesthetics. And I think it's time that we really change the narrative of what's healthy and aging, and how super agers should continue to be sexually active in safe ways, and things continue to shift with the times.
Larry,
in terms of communicating sexuality, Donna, it's happening around us when you look through that filter. So, for example, I invite you to think about Bruce Springsteen and his concert tour that's going on right now. Well, he's 13 days younger than me. Springsteen's out there showing what a vigorous man in his 70s is capable of doing. Jamie Lee Curtis is doing the same thing with respect to showing what women can be in that stage of life. And that's part of the cultural and social narrative that's being rewritten, and it tends to be written with our icons in the media. They tend to demonstrate an aspirational view of the future. And there's many more examples, but I think of those two as examples.
Yeah, they are.
They're not the kind of people that you would kick out of bed, depending on which sex you are.
Larry, here you are 85 years old. You are still engaged very much in business. You've been involved with Dick and putting this book together, as well as with Dr. Will and Brent Green. This is something, here you are, people might say, in your middle 80s, why are you even bothering to be engaged and involved? You're a great example of super aging. Address that.
Well, I love work. I love what I do, and I thought the super aging book, the super aging concept, really was an opportunity to make a contribution to a lot of people, to help other people enjoy the same quality of life I do. So it really was sort of a very personal kind of endeavor, as much as a, excuse me a second, talk to you from a hotel room because we started late. The cleaning people keep knocking on the door. But anyways, I thought there was a real opportunity to communicate, all the wonderful things I experienced, and with all of David's category knowledge, we thought we could get together and create a cohesive brand that really would explain this. And I've been creating new brands all my life. I sort of joke with friends, if I ever wrote a memoir, it would be from Super Moist, which I created, I think, almost 50 years ago, and I think it's still on the market, a cake mix to super aging. I think, I want to make what we're doing work for a lot of people, and I think, we're extending the idea of the book to a living website, where we keep augmenting our resources and augmenting our news feed. So to me, it's very exciting to be in a position to be able to do, if you would, all this good in the world and provide people with all of this great information.
Well, I think it is really special because super aging covers so many different points of information. And if you're a younger person and, well, let's say you're in your 40s or your 50s and you're wondering, gee whiz, what would it be like if I lived to be over 100 years of age? That's really a good question to ask. And the reason it's a good question to ask is because I know of more than one individual that has lived to be over 100 years of age. One lady I interviewed, her name was Lucy. She lived to be 106. Another lady that I interviewed ended up being 103, 105. And there's some I'm aware of that are close to 110. But I know you definitely don't want to be like someone that I saw on a program who was 114 years of age, and she couldn't do anything. She was literally in a wheelchair. She couldn't communicate, and this isn't a quality of life. So one of the things regarding super aging that's so important is to really value yourself and those that you love that are going into their senior years, and encouraging them to be proactive in their wellness, in their financial planning, in looking at the lifestyle that they want to have so that they can have a quality of life. When you listen to people in their 90s and they are going back to college, one woman I remember seeing, she was asked by some young people, she was 95, I think, and she said, I've gone back to college and I have gotten my bachelor's degree in my 90s. And someone had the audacity to ask her, why in the world would you want to do that? You're in your 90s. Why? She said, I was bored. I got tired of watching television. She's thinking of going in for her master's.
Yes, that's
now,
great.
let's get real, folks, okay? When you have that kind of a mentality, and by the way, this lady was sitting in a wheelchair. She didn't care. Her brain was working. She was active. You don't become a fossil. So changing your mind about aging, changing your mind. And these gentlemen, Brett Green, Dr. Will, Dick Cravett, and Larry Wolf. Here they have put together something that is changing the dynamic of a lot of people's thinking. And I know there are some people out there that are going to say, I'm sorry, Terry, you're just not realistic. Well, I got news for you. If you are looking at the fact that you could easily live to be over 100 years of age, you better start thinking about what it is you want to be able to do. And so planning financially is important. Looking at your wellness is important. And why not decide to climb a mountain like a woman I was aware of many years ago? She was 95. She was keeping up with the Sherpas. Okay, now you may not want to do that, those of you watching, but why not think about it? What is it you'd like to explore? Gentlemen, I want to thank you for being with me. It has been a delight having you as guests. And go for it. I'm so impressed with what you've done. And Super Aging, we'll be showing you the book. And just know that my daily programming that I have on the radio, it still goes on, even though I'm doing the television programming now. So it's still there, and you will be able to hear the audio of this program as well. So be sure to check out the Donna Szebo Show on the internet and Warriors for Peace. And I am, again, gentlemen, so delighted we've had this chance for conversation. I wish you continued success. And Larry and David, when you come out with your next book, let me know. And Brent Green, I know you've got a book on the way. And Dr. Will, you better get busy. You got to catch up with these gentlemen. Okay? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Donna. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for inviting us.
Oh, it's been just a delight. It's been just a delight. Thank you again. Donna Sebo here.
Thank you.
We're saying goodbye, and I want to say we're going to be having some more opportunities to have some conversation. So be sure you check out the Donna Sebo Show special editions. Bye for now.
You have been listening to the Donna Sebo Show special editions. The audio version of this program will also be heard on the Donna Sebo Show radio broadcast. We are delighted you were able to join us and invite you to share this programming with your friends and family. Have a rich and fulfilling life.